touch anything. Don't touch it. We have sound. Okay, so hi everybody. Hope everyone can still hear me. My God, that was a little alarming. Yeah, I have been pleasantly surprised by how much great dialogue has been going on in the chat and in the comments. So I thought it would be really cool for us to go through some of the newer videos from Diane. And I will say, I have a lot of people who have been like, they feel like my approach is a little bit mean, but I personally feel like I try my best to be kind and compassionate, even when I don't agree with somebody. It doesn't always work out because I'm a human being. So if you find anything that I say to be, I don't know, mean or not fair, let me know in the chat. I'm always willing to listen and try to help myself get better and to develop better compassion skills, because it is a skill, Somebody said, did we figure out what the exotic cosplay was? No. So I do know what her TikTok is. I'm not going to share it because she didn't ask for any of this. I did find that somebody else had released it kind of earlier on. It's, I don't know. It's like anime. She wears some short skirts. Like sometimes she has some cleavage. It's not that, I don't know. I don't find it to be that exotic. I guess if you're quite conservative, it might be exotic, but I feel like maybe it's just kind of out of the norm for what was expected, and that to her might feel a little exotic, a little pushing the envelope. Not really sure. Here from the previous video, shone a light on what my partner is going through. Thank you all. Well, I'm sad that your partner is going through that, but I'm really happy that maybe there's a path forward to some sort of at least understanding that it's not your fault. We, of course, all are human beings, and we're going to have things that we're going through and things that we don't react well to. But at the end of the day, parents are supposed to be, parents are the like higher up in the power dynamic, right? Like we rely on them when we're children. So if you had issues with them when you were when you were multiple children at the same time, if you have issues with them at that point in your life, then it is entirely their deal, right? Like, I'm not saying that there aren't children who are particularly challenging to work with, because not all of us is about like how we're raised. Some of it is kind of just genetics and it's luck of the draw for some people, but the parent is the person with all of the power. So in most cases, it is the parent who kind of guided where the relationship was going to go, right? Ellie said, certainly I wouldn't call what Haley does sexual, more like cosplay and dress up. Exactly. It's not exotic. It's, I feel like the way that she phrased it was maybe accurate for her perspective, but I do think it was kind of misleading in a way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, being an SW or anything like that. That's not even what I'm talking about. It's just like, I feel like she led her, I want to say constituents, that's not the right word. She led her audience to believe something that wasn't entirely accurate, right? Let's see. Sounds pretty normal, not that exotic. Not exotic at all for cosplay. I've seen some cosplay where I'm like, I don't, like it borders on being like, oh, okay, so you can just like walk around like that. Okay, I get it. Because like some of it is very much like, it kind of looks like everything is revealed to a certain degree, but like it might be like a costume piece. I have no idea. I'm not a cosplayer, obviously, but I know that you can get like a rubber chest, right? That like looks like the goods, but is not the goods. So I've seen stuff that's a lot more like titillating, I guess you could say, than Haley's. I think she really likes fashion, and that's what it is at the end of the day. Mentioned the exotic cosplay part, made it feel like she was ashamed of it or judging her daughter for it. I think she probably did have some judgments about it. Um, and I try to think of this as a parent also, where it's like sometimes my kid will come to me and say something, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's my baby. No, 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 no. We're not ready. We're not ready for that." So it might just be like part of it is that way, but then to put it online and to sound quite judgmental, it felt off. It felt like she was sexualizing it more than it was already sexual, right? Does that make sense? Kind of. You think that she wanted to paint the picture of her daughter being as bad as possible. Yeah, I kind of felt that way too. And I tried to be kind when it comes to like people's defense mechanisms, because I know that when I'm defensive, like my first thing is to like get very aggressive and to kind of like shut down and just be like, no. And that's like me trying to learn emotional maturity, right? And all of us have like those hair trigger things where we hear it and we're just like, no, absolutely not. Because I know what happens when somebody says this is going to happen, and then I'm going to feel bad, and I don't want to feel bad. And you kind of have to like talk yourself off the ledge. So I think she just went years, unfortunately, without talking herself off the ledge. And my hope is that some of these videos that we're going to watch today kind of help a little bit, because I want to believe the best in her. And I know, like, you can tell, even if it's not the kind of love that is like healthy for most people, or at least some people, it is a form of love, if nothing else. Love is subjective. Love is something that you feel in a very personal way. So I know that she loves her daughter. I think that her love is maybe not healthy. And the way that she centers herself in issues of just the things that have happened with her kid that obviously she doesn't want to talk about, but whatever. So we have no idea, right? We have no idea at the end of the day what her child said to create all of this. But we do know that she centers herself in conflict. And that is not unusual at first. Everyone centers themselves in conflict to some degree. I think it's really easy to say, no, I'm a good person. And because I'm a good person, I don't ever do stuff like that. I can't see myself in this woman. I can see myself in her sometimes. And I've had some people say that I look like her, or that they thought that I was her daughter, or that I sound like her. So to me, it's not about like not seeing yourself as like, I don't want to see myself as a narcissist. Fine, fair. Nobody does. That's a horrible thing to want to see yourself as. It's kind of odd to really take that as a badge of honor, right? Like that's not pro-social behavior. But when I look at Diane, I can see some of my reactions. And that's kind of the point of this, is not to say, let's jump on Diane. What happened? Sorry, I don't know what happened there. So that's not to say like, let's jump on Diane. Let's like talk about all the ways that she sucks. It's like, let's look at her reactions and then look at ourselves and say, okay, well, how can I avoid this kind of reaction? Because I know that it hurts people. And it's not always easy. There are some things that people say to me and I'm just like, I don't know how to respond to this. I need to walk away before I make shit ugly. And it's okay. It's okay if that's your first response. It's okay that that was her first response. But the hope is that you don't go several years with that being your response and with your defenses that up, so that, unlikely to ever have another relationship with her child, like any form of a relationship with her child, if this is the pattern that she's going to go through. A lot of adversarial aspects to it as well. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not uncommon for narcs to overstate things or misrepresent them to kind of justify their negative attitude toward their child. It's also a bit of the smear aspect. Yeah, it was definitely a smear campaign. I fully get it. I'm not saying that I'm not calling her narcissistic because I don't think it's accurate, but I do think that people conflate two different things, which is narcissistic personality disorder, which is a thing. It's a clinically diagnosed issue, right? And then there is narcissism, which we all have to some degree. Like if there's a spectrum of narcissism, I'm keeping myself alive. I'm defending myself if somebody like says something about me that I don't think is right. And I'm making sure that nobody like actively hurts me as much as I can. Or at least I'm like protecting myself to the best of my ability. And then there's like, I'm the best. Nobody can touch me. I'm going to make sure that anybody who comes against me is miserable in their life. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they are unhappy, right? And we all fall somewhere in that spectrum. And we all like, I mean, from one day to the next, it might be a little bit like further in, right? So I think it's pretty important that we keep that in mind. Ooh. Rethinking narcissism. I'm going to have to look into that. Okay, let's get this started. So, I know that she did have a video out that was I don't know what happened to it. She must have deleted it, but it happened like maybe a month ago. She put out a video. It was not well received. Like, I don't think people were hanging with it for very long, so she did remove it. And I'm not entirely sure when. I didn't get to download that one, but I did download these guys. Right. Yeah, and that the top one, the top row, and then Dear Estranged Moms. So I figured we could go through that. Let's see. And you'll have to tell me if you can actually hear this. Can you guys hear this? Did I do it right? Can't hear it? Okay. Nada. No. All right, let's see what I can do here. Audio capture. We're figuring it out together. Okay, let's try this.
The trail of destruction, sometimes they just are gone. And
anything?
nobody knows where they are or what they're doing.
Anything?
And there's no closure.
Oh, it's privated unlisted.
Is intense and horrific.
We're going to get this to work, guys. I have faith in us.
Talking about loving, conscientious parents who did the best they could.
Yay, we're hearing it. Okay, I'm going to restart it so we can go through it together.
I have been talking to a lot of you lately, and oh my gosh, my heart goes out to you all. Literally every story is tragic. There's heartbreak. Moms are left with this hole in their heart when the kids just up and disappear. Sometimes with a reason, sometimes without a reason, sometimes with a trail of destruction, sometimes they just are gone. And nobody knows where they are or what they're doing, and there's no closure. Everybody's pain is intense and horrific, and parents, I'm talking about loving, conscientious parents. All
right, well, here's where she's going to start this shit again. I'm sorry, I'm starting it like I'm pausing so early because she's already saying, and I'm talking about parents who were loving and kind and giving and did the best that they could. I don't think people are willing to accept that you can love your child and also massively fuck up. And I know that you can do both of those things because I have done it before. And if we're able to Okay, I've got those ads paused. I'm going to have to figure out, like, I don't like how many ads are in this. I feel like you should be able to say, this is the amount of ads that you can have, period. Sorry about that, guys. But I can say without a doubt that I have been abusive to a lot of people. And it's not that I did it because I want to see them hurt. It's because I'm having to unlearn my own shit, right? And if you can say that to yourself, you can get better. And I know that early on when I was becoming a mom, when I first had my kid, and I was just starting to figure out myself in this new role, I was overstimulated, I was overworked, I felt like I didn't have enough support. And that's unfortunately really common for new moms, is like the lack of support. And people just kind of saying, oh, well, you just need time with the baby. And then like 72 hours later, you still haven't slept and feeling like, nobody actually gives a shit about me. They just care about the baby. So going through that giant change, I did feel like my worst self, and I was not the most patient. And it took me a long time to figure out, okay, well, here's where all of this reaction is coming from. Here's the trauma that it came from. Here's how I feel. Here's how my feelings are valid. Here's how my feelings aren't valid, actually. Here's how I'm making things up. And to be able to look at yourself as a mother and say, I know the parts that I did wrong. I know the parts that I wish I could go backwards and fix it. But because I know that, I'm not going to make myself ashamed of it. I'm going to make sure that I remember it so that anytime I'm close to that edge, I either get help or I walk away. And I say, okay, I can't do this with you right now because I'm about to not handle myself very well. And it's about learning emotional maturity, right? Like, my feelings are not the most important in every situation. Sometimes I need to walk away so that I can get my feelings in check and try to be a better mom. And it's not always possible, and it doesn't always work well. And sometimes I just like walk away without saying something, and I have to come back and say, that's not about you, and I'm sorry. And I'm trying to learn myself how to be a better mom. And I open up the doorway to have the conversation, like, how did I fail you in this moment? How can I do better? What do I need to say to you in that moment so that I get the space that I need to not be mean or dismissive or whatever bad behavior is going to come out of me. And then to just open the door, listen, accept it, make a plan of action. Like, okay, so when this happens again, I'm going to say, I need 5 minutes, and just walk away. And it doesn't mean I hate you. Doesn't mean I'm mad at you. It means that I know that my reaction is not necessary and I need to step back. So it's not about these moms it's not about these moms like being the best. Like, you're never going to be the best. But the fact that she can't even admit to herself that like sometimes you can do the best you can and it still fucks people up. It's still like not good, right? And if you're so hell-bent on seeing yourself as a good person, you're never going to get to the point where you can look at your child and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know the parts that I fucked up and I wish I could do it over. How can we move forward? Right? Like, you're so hell-bent on being good that you can't see yourself as any version of bad. And everybody is good and bad. There is no good or bad because everybody is just a person. I wish she would just accept that. Sorry, didn't mean to go off on a rant, but that like really bothers me. That's like my trigger with her.
The best they could raising this child. They're quite often blindsided. They had no idea any of this was going to happen. And they don't know what to do. There's so many emotions, and they just feel lost, trapped, sad, depressed, angry, all at the same time. It's a whirlwind. So there are just a lot of questions. And if they cut off communication, if there's no contact, then you can't have a discussion. You can't work it out. You can't, you can reflect back in your own void, basically, and try to speculate what went wrong. What did you mess up? Where did you, where were you off? Where did you make a mistake? Where should you have done things differently? But you're just doing this in your own mind because you have
right.
No
that's where it
feedback
starts.
from the actual child. And so without communication, you can't work
Insight.
it out. And many times they'll refuse to go to a family therapy. And so you can't even work it out with a third party. So what's a parent to do? It's a hard road. It's a hard road, and this journey it's a journey of grief. It's ambiguous grief. It's ambiguous grief because it's like you're grieving somebody who's died, but they're not dead, but they're kind of dead to you.
No.
So ambiguous grief
What?
is a lot like the loss of a dream.
What the hell? They're dead to you. They're dead to you. I don't think I could ever live with a world where my kid was dead to me. I don't know what it would take. I don't know what she'd have to do. That's insane. That instead of just saying I hurt my daughter and I can't have a relationship with her, I think of her as dead to me. And I'm hoping that's like an overstatement. That's something that she's just like saying because she's not really thinking it through and it's kind of off the cuff. But it's like, that's really disturbing to me. Like, instead of apologizing, she'd rather think of her daughter as dead. Whew. My God.
The loss of an expectation, the loss of things working out the way you thought they would work out, maybe initially when you had kids. But here's the thing, it's really easy to focus on all the bad stuff we did or, the mistakes we made. But what's happening typically, unless we have an undiagnosed mental illness or, if we were a sexual or physical abuser or an ongoing...
Ooh. Ophelia reminds me of people who call themselves a trans widow because even though their partner is alive and thriving with their newfound identity, they treat it like their partner is dead and gone. Yikes. Oh. Like, that's a whole person. You can't just put somebody in a box and say, because you're not in this box that I assumed you'd always be in, you're dead to me. That's crazy person behavior. And that's very ableist. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. That's like really antisocial behavior, right? That's not the way that we evolved to be. That's absolutely insane. Ugh. Yuck.
Verbal abuser. I'm not talking about that. Most parents that I talk to, that's not really applicable to them. They were just...
How the fuck would you know?
Doing the best they could with what they knew at the time.
How would you know?
And now the...
Kizzy, your parents said you were dead to them when you came out as trans. That's fucking disgusting. I'm sorry. It makes me want to cry. Well, you deserve better.
They're gone and they don't know what to do. But it's so easy to focus on whatever mistake we might have made that time that I yelled at her, like way too much for the situation. That probably scared her. And did I apologize for that later? I don't think so. And maybe I should have. Or, that time when I didn't let her go to her friend's house for a sleepover because of some reason. Who knows? Who knows what the thing is? And it's so easy.
That's not enough, though. Those two examples that you gave are simply not enough to be the reason that your child doesn't want to see you anymore. Like, because you yelled at them once? No. If you had made it okay for her to say, hey, you yelled at me, and that made me scared, I didn't like it, that made me feel small and demeaned, then you could easily get through that because you didn't let her go on a sleepover. Who gives a shit? My mom didn't let me go on sleepovers and I still talk to her. Like, that's not enough to end a relationship. It's like a pattern of behavior that you're unwilling to look at. It's absolutely insane. Kizzy, you went no contact for only 10 years, or for almost 10 years, and they finally came around when you got the nice job. Questionable. Nizar said your mother said she would flat disown you once you started transitioning. God, that's insane. I'm so sorry, you guys. That's really wildly disappointing. There's absolutely nothing that my daughter could do that would make me say, you're dead to me. There are certainly things that would make me say, hey, wow, this is not something that I ever thought that you'd do. And I'm really upset and hurt and disappointed. Not you're dead to me. It would be like, hey, what are we doing at this point to get through this? Let me see if I can. I don't like that. Like, I can't just choose if there's going to be an ad. I'm sorry, you guys. I'll keep pausing it. Anytime you tell me that there's an ad, I'll pause it and you'll get at least 10 minutes of no ad. That's annoying. Next time I'll do like no ads, I think. Whatever. But yeah, that's absolutely insane to I can't think of something that she would have to do. I really can't. Like, she would have to like really physically hurt somebody for absolutely no reason. Like hurt somebody or like, you know, be sadistic to somebody or like an animal for me to be like, wow, that's really incredibly fucked up and I need some space. But I still wouldn't say you're dead to me. That's still my child. And whether I like it or not, that's still something that perhaps I contributed to. Like, that's my responsibility. I'm her mother. I never stop being her mother. My hope is that she'll never be dead to me. And that's like, that's a possibility that I don't think these parents think of. Like, your kid could very literally not be alive. And how would you feel? And I know that a lot of parents are like, well, your mom could die and how would you feel? It's like, well, that's not the same thing because you raise a child. That's a person that you were supposed to care for. And when they're no longer alive, you have no place to put all that love. And now you're saying that your kid is dead to you. What in the world? That is your responsibility till the day you die, is to support and try to help your child. It's just gross, man. It's gross.
Get into our own heads and just keep going over, okay, what did I do wrong? Oh, I did that wrong. I did that wrong. I did that wrong. I did that wrong. And I'm a shitty parent because I did that wrong. I'm so terrible. What a terrible person I am. God, what's my problem? That my child would stop talking to me. I must be a horrible person. And then you go down that rabbit hole of like, I suck and it's all my fault.
Right. And that's not useful, but
I'm worthless. I'm a horrible human being.
Right. So now you're victimizing yourself.
It's just this pit of negativity that we get into in our own heads, and our own crap talker just won't stop. And you get depressed. Some parents get suicidal. They withdraw. They isolate.
You know who also
it's so easy to
might
go
get
into
suicidal? The
But
children that
I would
you
like to
torment.
remind you of all the good things you did as a mother. You birthed a freaking human being out of your body
Not
into this world.
every mother did that.
You cuddled it. You talked to it. You fed it. You nursed it. You swaddled it.
Wait.
You took it places. You passed it around the family and
Do you want a reward? Do you want a reward? That's what you're supposed to do.
everyone made googly eyes at this beautiful little baby, whether it was a son or a daughter. You got up in the middle of the night all the time to like feed it.
It's what you're supposed to
love
do.
it. And there was just so much that went into this little baby. And then the baby became a toddler. And, when it started screaming in the restaurant, you took it outside, him or her. You comforted this toddler and you clothed this toddler and you gave this toddler food and shelter and toys and family experiences. You took the child to Disneyland, maybe.
Easier for
or
parents
other
to crucify
parks,
themselves
or
rather than just sit and listen and
play dates with
accept.
other moms, and
Yep.
then, if you had to go to work, then
Use
you
of
would
it
put
versus
the child
them.
in daycare and work with the daycare to make sure that the child was behaving and learning socialization skills. And then the child went to school, and then you had to deal with all of the
That's
school
what you
things.
signed up for.
Getting to know the teacher and making.
Look, not everybody chooses when they get to be a parent. Some people, unfortunately, have it foisted upon them. And I do think that being a parent should be a personal choice that you make. That way you understand the weight of your choice. And that way you can really think about whether or not you're ready to devote your life to another person and have yourself be kind of almost secondary for quite a while. But that's like what you're supposed to do. Like if you have a child, and my hope is that she had a child willingly, that she wasn't coerced into having a child in some way. But if you have a child by choice, that's literally what you're supposed to do. And if you don't have a child by choice, that's literally what you're supposed to do. Like you don't actually get a reward for comforting a toddler. And toddlers are kind of a lot. They're extra a lot of the time, but that's like the best part of them. They're wild and free, and like you get to experience that with them. And anytime I'm around, like I have friends who now are starting to have kids. Anytime I'm around, they're like little babies, like little bitties. You get to see things all over again. You get to think about all the things that you take for granted. That's a beautiful part. Like you get something from that too. You're not just endlessly giving like the fucking giving tree. You're getting something from that too. Like it should be a beautiful experience for those who want to have it, right? If you have the support and, you know, the mental health and all of the stuff that have to go with it to raising a child, it can be really hard if your mental health is like not where it needs to be. But hopefully you have the support necessary to raise the child in a healthy and happy way. You don't get a prize for it. That's literally your job. You just don't get a prize for it. I wish it was easier. I wish we had more of a community to raise our children with, because that's the way it's supposed to be. But you certainly don't get a prize for comforting your toddler because they had a tantrum in a public space. You don't get a prize for nursing if you're able to breastfeed and you choose to breastfeed. You don't get a prize for waking up at night with your child. That's what you're supposed to do. So stop. Stop saying it like that's all that it took. Your child needed emotional maturity. Your child needed you to teach them how to be an equal to the people in their lives, not to be subservient and to fawn and to try to get love from the people around them desperately. And it kind of seems like that might be what's happening here. I hope it's not. But man, this is rough.
Sure that the child was behaving, and more food, more clothes, more toys.
She puts me on edge too.
More family experiences, just more and more and more. Every night and every day you poured love and energy and expectation into this child.
You sound resentful.
Most parents want their children to grow up to be the best possible people they can be, and so they just shower them with love and affection and attention. And you know,
sound like you resent that.
Older and they have to, you know, they're in grade school and they have to do homework and they don't want to do the homework, and so you have to find ways to just get the child to do the homework, because if the child doesn't do the homework, they're going to fail in school and probably fail in life, and that's the last thing you want as a parent.
The child too.
To fail in life, and so you just pour more and more. There's birthday parties and Christmas presents and Easter.
It is transactional.
And Valentine's.
You do
and
this.
Cards and gifts and
you do this, so I
outings
show you
and
love.
Vacations, and you know, maybe things go well.
I give you this, so I can get
and
this.
you're able to keep it together as a family unit, but maybe not. Maybe something happens and maybe the dad goes off and has an affair, or maybe he gets verbally abusive, or maybe he gets physically abusive, or maybe he just, I don't even know. Maybe he has a mental problem that's undiagnosed and it becomes untenable to stay in the relationship. And for the sake of the child, you decide to end it, or they decide to end it. And maybe that's amicable. Maybe you guys are able to work out the co-parenting thing, but maybe not. Maybe the other spouse is vindictive and turns the kids against you.
I knew it. I knew she was going to do this. Okay, so the minute she started talking about like bad partnership and like divorce or like separation, I knew she was going to go to this, because this is a talking point. Like, the other parent made my child not want to be around me. And yeah, sometimes that can happen. It's not often though. And the fact that so many people fall to this shows that they're not willing to look at their own behavior and say, okay, what could I have done to make it easier for my kid to come to me and to feel safe with me? Because yeah, if you're getting like a whole bunch of crap from the parent that you mainly live with about like how mom does this and mom does that and mom's not safe and mom's not a good person, that's abuse. And if a kid has to live in that situation, absolutely, they're going to do their best, right? Oh, it looks like there's going to be another ad here in a second. I don't know if I can immediately pause it. Let me see. But yeah, that's absolutely abuse, and kids will sometimes just kowtow to whatever that parent, the like parent that's actually their primary caregiver, is saying, just to like not have to hear it, right? Just to make everything easier for themselves. And that's really sad and it's awful, but it doesn't happen as often as one might think. Let's see. I pressed pause. Did it work? Yeah. Okay, let's see if there's another ad. But yeah, it's like, because it doesn't happen that often, when it does happen, it gets a lot of press. And when it does happen, it's always tragic. But a lot of parents that don't have any contact with their kid lean on blaming somebody else. And that to me is really suspect. I don't like it. Sorry. I did it as soon as I could. I paused it as soon as I could. Okay. That's
becomes
annoying.
The fun dad, where he's got all the
I'll figure the
money, and
ad
so the kids
situation
wanna
out
go
next
off and be
round.
with
I
him,
promise.
but you're the stable one, and they always come back to you. But then they go to, and then
I'm sorry,
then
Jack.
you're all trying to sort that out. Everybody is just trying to sort that out. But through it all, you are doing the best you can with what you have. Maybe you have to, take a second job to make ends meet. You've got to pay the rent or the mortgage. You've
Being
got to buy
conditioned
the
to
food,
fawn
the
is not
insurance.
fun.
You've
No,
got to buy
it's
the
not.
iPad.
I was
You've got to
definitely
you have to do
conditioned
all
to fawn.
these things for the child. And yes, you signed up for this. I mean, unless the child was an accident. But even if the child was an accident, you could have given the child up for adoption. But no, you did not.
Oh yeah,
give
it's
the
such an
child up for
easy
adoption.
thing
You bonded with the
to
child.
put a
you loved
child
the
child
you
in
keep
the
child.
adoption
You
industry.
committed yourself to raising this child into a beautiful, healthy human being. That's every parent's goal.
This is treating a kid like an object. So gross.
And it's not easy. It's not easy. And yes, we make mistakes along the way. But when you put the good things I did for my child every moment of every day, if you count up the millions of good moments you had, the laughter, the reading stories, the watching movies together, the picking up rocks, the walking on trails, the going to the zoo, just even playing around the house with a little ball or something, all those millions of good moments, those go in your pro column, okay? And then there are going to be those moments where
I don't think she understands. Like, you don't need that many really bad moments to not trust somebody and to not be able to trust a person again. And that's something that I've said to so many people in my life. Like, it doesn't take many moments for me to be like, oh, by the by, I can't trust you anymore, because when I show that you've crossed a boundary or that something that you did hurt me and it makes me feel bad about our relationship, you blow up at me. It doesn't take many times for it to be like, oh, that's just not a safe person. And especially with a child. Especially with a child. And if you don't allow them to have their own thoughts about things, if you don't allow them to express, like, hey, man, you hurt me. I didn't like this. When you yelled at me, it really scared me. It made me feel small. It made me feel like you were demeaning me. Like, if you're not allowed to say that to your parent, that just gets bottled up. And it only takes like a few big events, maybe 2 or 3, before you're like, oh, yeah, mom's not safe. We don't talk to mom because I can't trust her to react well when I say something she doesn't like. So yeah, you can pick up rocks, you can do the trails, you can take them to parties, you can buy them things, you can take them to vacations. But if you've blown up at them at times where they really needed you to keep your shit together, they won't trust you. You don't get a pass for that. Like, that's just something that happens with any human being. If you were around an adult that randomly would yell at you if you said something that they did that hurt you, that would absolutely make you not want to be around that person. And yet we expect children to behave in a different way, like they're not human. It's weird and depressing.
you effed up, you yelled, maybe you shook them, maybe you gave them a spanking when you shouldn't have, or you thought it was too much, or who knows.
Oh, maybe you assaulted them. Put that in the bad column, but that's like 1 or 2 times, right? My God.
You made a mistake. Maybe you didn't get them the organic food and that was the only thing they wanted. You didn't give them the candy that they wanted, or whatever. You had to deny them something they wanted, and you thought
Putting
it was for their
candy
own
in the
good,
same
and they
box
never
is like
forgave you, they
shaking
never
or hitting
forgot
your
it.
child.
You know, those are okay. Those are on the con
Okay.
side of things. You have the pro side, all the good things you did for your child, to do your best
I only
to
hit my
raise
kid
this
like a
child.
handful of
And then you
times,
did the
but I
bad
didn't give them
things, the con
candy, and then I
things. I
didn't take
screwed
them
up.
to the
I shouldn't have
party.
done
I
that. I
screwed up.
overreacted. But
Those
I'll
are
tell you,
those
the
are all at
parents
the
that I
same
talk
level.
to, there are just gazillions more moments in the pro column than there are
Wow
in the con column.
is right.
And I think we lose sight of
Wow.
that. You know, if you're the conscientious, loving parent who did their very best and messed up once in a while, the good in that million moment column way outweighs the bad in those
Right.
every once in a
Yeah,
while you
you're
screwed
right,
up.
Diane. I'm sorry, we're never gonna get through this fucking video because I keep having to I keep having to stop. You're right. If you just messed up a few times and then the rest of the time we were really, really, we were in sync with each other. We had open conversations about things that we could both do better. We had a loving and healthy relationship, but like there were a few times that I was not my best self and I really messed up. That would be a person who would maybe need to talk to you about some stuff when they got older, but that would be probably an okay relationship, assuming the mess ups weren't like giant, right? Like just a few like normal, like I yelled at you and that was not cool of me. Like I shouldn't have yelled at you, or like I grounded you for something that you didn't do. I shouldn't have grounded you. Like that kind of thing, like the stuff that you come back and you're like, okay, well, this was a misunderstanding and I'm sorry that I reacted that way. That's the stuff that an adult can come back to their parent and say, these are the things that you did and it really hurt me and it made me feel like I couldn't trust you, or it made me feel like our relationship was in some way like not as strong as it could be. That's not a reason that anyone would cut off their parent. That's like a normal parent-child dynamic. Like you're gonna mess up. That's unfortunately the way being a human works. What she's talking about is not what most children who estrange are actually going through. That's insane to me.
Column.
I'll try
And
not to
as
stop
long
so
as
many
you did
times.
your very best to do the right thing with what you knew at the time, that is all you can ask from yourself. That is really
Alexa,
all you can do.
Parents
the
never
child
want to
decides
buy
to
the
leave,
organic broccoli.
You
Traumatizing
have to
us.
let them go.
That's
You
why
have
we
to
don't
let
talk to them.
go.
It's the organic
I'm trying to think of a
broccoli.
nice way to say that, but that's the cold, hard truth. You have to let them go. They're adults.
Yeah.
They're making their own choices. They're on their own journey. You have to give them up to the universe, to God. You have to trust that they're going to do the best they can do.
You have to
with what
pretend they
know.
died.
That's what they're doing right now.
I mean,
And
yeah, you do have to just
tormenting
let your
yourself
kids go.
over those, dozen, maybe it was 2 dozen, maybe it was 100 things you did wrong. And not even thinking about the millions of things that you did right every moment. You've got to stop. You've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop beating yourself up. You really can't
Thanks, Ellie.
blame yourself for everything.
Just like
You
we're
can
gonna like
blame
be an hour and a
yourself
half
for
into
those
this
mistakes you made,
and still on this
and
video
you can
because
try
it's
to correct those
pissing me
mistakes,
off.
or apologize for those mistakes, or absolutely learn from those mistakes. But we do a lot more right
Bopper, I
than we
turned
do
off the
wrong
ads.
as mothers. Motherhood is a noble calling.
I'll turn them back on in like
Okay,
30
and
minutes
those
and we'll listen to
mothers
one
who
ad.
stick with their children as long as they possibly can. Sometimes they get into a situation where the other parent gets the kids and they can't be in
I
their kid's life
cannot
as much.
fucking believe this woman. It's always about what somebody else did. It's always about what somebody else did. It's never that you messed up and your kids don't feel safe with you, but they do feel safe with the other parent. My God. Kizzy, don't blame yourself for shaking the baby. Just forget about it and focus on the time you bought a Snickers bar before they got expensive. I mean, I can't blame myself for everything, right? What am I going to punish myself for everything? I bought the Snickers bar.
As they want, but as long as you've done your best to be there for them, That's all you can do. They are human beings now. They always were human beings, but they're
Did you
adults
hear
now.
it?
They're doing their own.
Oh, sometimes she says the quiet part out loud. And she literally just said, they're human beings now. Oh, wait, no, they were always human beings. What? C says, was anyone else conditioned to a fight response? I got both. So with some types of situations, I immediately get like really mouthy. And with other kinds of situations, I just completely retreat into myself and I'm like, that's fine. I'm not arguing. I know I'm right. I'm just not arguing. Whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter. What I think doesn't matter. It's really sad because to have to train yourself out of that is actually quite difficult because it is something that happens in your nervous system. How do you train yourself out of a normal nervous system response, right? It's absolutely horrible to look back at my life now and see like the times where I should have stood up for myself or just been like, you know what? I'm not interested in being here anymore. I don't want to be around you. But I was just like, well, if I'm nice enough, if I'm submissive enough, if I compliment them enough, if I do all the things that they've demanded of me enough, I'll be good enough to love. Right? And then in those moments where I've been like, no, fuck you, I hate you, I'm not doing this anymore. And I've like gone to that as like my immediate, I don't think I've ever told anyone I hate them, but I have been like, no, fuck you, I'm not doing this shit with you anymore. Like I've been like really stern and like aggressive, maybe even like faster than is normal. That's when it's like, oh, but you're abusive. It's like, you pushed me. Like I've been fawn up until this point and now I can't be fawn anymore. Like I can't be soft, I can't be submissive because I've been pushed too far. And a lot of times parents like this will push you to that point. Aw, Kizzy. Thank you. Oh, I see that you all like the human.
And
let's listen.
What torments
Oh
us is our expectations. It's that dream we had of, oh, I'm gonna, my kid's gonna get married and she's gonna have grandkids and we're gonna do family things like we did growing up and like she had growing up. And when that doesn't happen, these are dreams you may not even know that you had. And when that doesn't happen, or maybe you do get to know your grandchild and then boom, it gets cut off for some reason that you don't fully understand. You can't do anything about it. You can't control it. You can't force anything.
Okay, if you're not treating the parent with respect, you don't have immediate access to the grandchildren. Because children will see that you're treating their parent with disrespect and feel unsafe with your parent, like with their parent. Sorry, I got all worked up in a tizzy. Yeah, and I get it. Like it's a dream that you then have to let go of because you don't know if you'll ever get to have it because healing a relationship relies on two people, not just your wants and needs. But at the same time, like, you're disappointed for what you're not getting. You're not disappointed because you damaged your relationship with your child to the degree that like now they can't have anything to do with you. My God.
You can only respect whatever boundaries they've given you. You can only accept what is.
But you didn't respect the boundaries you were given.
If they haven't said no contact, you can somehow let them know the door is always open. And if they said no contact, then I learned the hard way, no contact. No contact.
Ooh, that's a really good point. Liz said, does she realize that her daughter dreams of having that same connection with her mother? I seriously can't stomach how she can even begin to empathize with her daughter as it requires self-criticism. Yeah. Like all those dreams were taken from your baby too. How are you not getting it? Like your child had dreams. She had dreams of what her life would be like with you, or they had dreams of what, I don't know how they identify. They had dreams of what their life would be like, and now they have to come to terms with the fact that they might never get that. You know? That's really painful, but it's got to be all about you.
Have to just let her go. I have to let her go. She's an adult. She's supporting herself. She's making her own decisions. She's following her dreams. I am still proud of her. I still love
Good.
her.
Good.
If she ever wants to come back, she can. But if she never comes back, I am fully aware that that's a possibility, and it is what it is. I can't do anything about it. And so all of my expectations or dreams of what I thought my older years would be like in terms of family, I had to let them go. Is that easy? No, it's not easy. It's very hard. It's a process. There is a lot of grieving involved. It is a journey of grief at its very
She released
core.
this on Mother's Day, by the by.
And healing is a spectrum. It's a spectrum from 0 to 100%, and I don't think anyone is ever 100% healed from this, because most parents I talk to, when a child just up and leaves and
Up and leave.
doesn't want
Stop
anything to do
it.
with them, no matter how many
Come the
children they
fuck
have, it's like
on.
a hole in their heart. And that hole, you may patch it up like you darn a sock, and the sock still works, and you've got all the rest of the knitting around it.
Yeah.
So it functions. but
She
there's
has
scar
a choice
there.
that she
There's a
could be able to
scar.
change and do
And the
better,
trick is to
and
get
to
from
open the door a little bit
That sort of
faster to a
Band-Aid,
potential
scabbed over
reconciliation, but she
condition
chooses
where
not
any
to.
little
She's
thing
just
rips it open and makes it bleed
sitting
again,
in the cold,
to the scar.
talking to a camera
Yes,
about
it's healed
how she
over.
was a great
Yes,
mother.
I see it's there. It's a reminder of what I went through. It's one of those things what
My
doesn't
God.
kill you makes you stronger. It's not easy, but you can get past this. You can get through this, and it's not giving up. Some parents seem to think that if they stop reaching out, if they stop trying to connect, if they stop
I feel like there might be a bias from communicating parents exactly like you who have kids that distance themselves for the same reason. I'm not entirely understanding that comment. I'm sure there are plenty of children who had parents who maybe their communication was one-sided. My hope is that my child never comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm not talking to you anymore because you did all these things." I'm not there yet. All I can do is say, like, I want to leave the door as open for her to talk to me about her feelings as I possibly can. That's it. And I have to hope that I did a good job at the end of the day. And it's entirely possible that there are children who have gone no contact with their parent, and their parent is very communicative. But if that communication is not open-ended, if that communication is, I'm talking at you, which I'm on a live stream. I don't know if you are aware of that. Like, I have no choice but to talk at you. That's kind of where we are right now. But if you leave that dialogue as open-ended, then the child will never feel like they have to completely cut off contact from you, hopefully, because they'll be able to talk to you. And you can talk about things as they happen, which is like the big deal, right? Because if a child is coming to their parent 30 years down the line and being like, "Hey, here's a laundry list of things you may or may not remember that you did that really hurt me, that now I'm having to pay for in my personality and in the types of connections that I make with the world," then yeah, that's going to be really difficult to get through. But if you're talking about things as they happen and saying, "Hey, here's how I behaved. Here's how I didn't like how I behaved. Here's how I'm going to do better in the future. How do you feel?" Then your kid not only feels like they have the opportunity to say things that are not positive about your behavior to you, but then they also can look at their own behavior and say, "Hey, here's how I behaved. Here's how I don't like how I behaved. Here's how I'm planning on fixing it in the future. And I hope that you accept my apology," which my kid has done before. And my kid, I've said this before, but my kid has handed me my ass on several occasions because, like, either I said something and it was kind of snippy, and she was like, "Hey, you don't have to talk to me like that." I was like, "Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. That was absolutely unnecessary." Or she's been like, "Hey, you yelled and I didn't like it. It made me feel small and demeaned. And I said, you're absolutely right. There's no reason for me as an adult woman to ever raise my voice, period. And it was like at my dog. My dog was, after my other dog died, she's been like really over the top protective and constantly barking at everything. And I just like lost it a little bit. And I was like, hey, shut up. And I was like really, really upset and like still in grief. And like, that's not an excuse, right? I don't need to yell at a dog. I am an adult woman. I shouldn't be yelling at anybody. But that's what happened. And my daughter came up to me and she was like, hey, man, I don't like that you did that. Made me feel small, made me feel scared, made me feel like when I'm having a hard time, I can't be loud. I can't feel my feelings. I can't like express myself. And I was like, hey, man, you're right. You're absolutely right. It was not okay what I did. That's just kind of how it works, right? Hopefully. And I've done better since that because I don't want to continue to make the same mistake over and over again and pretend it's the first time I'm ever hearing about it.
Trying to be in their child's life that they're giving up and it's wrong to give up, but it's not giving up. Giving them their space, giving them to God,
Giving them
up
to God.
the universe, giving into trust that they
That
can
sounds
manage
like
their
very
lives now,
morbid.
that you've done your part. Giving them the
Is that
space
like a
to walk away
is that a
and
different
be
way
who
of
they
saying
are
like
and
you're
do
dead to
their
me?
own thing. And yeah, sometimes it's scary because if your child is doing drugs or addicted to alcohol and you live every day thinking you might get that call from the police that your child was found dead in a ditch, yeah, that's scary, but you can't live a life in limbo. You can, and I
It
see
feels like
people
she's
doing it,
conflating like
and they're freaking miserable.
children with addiction issues
Healing is a
and children
choice.
who have chosen to
It's
go
a
no
mindset.
contact. Is that,
You
am I
have
alone
to
there?
decide that I am sick of the suffering. I am sick of crying every day. I am sick of worrying about the dead in the ditch thing every day. I am sick of putting my life on hold because of this. I am sick of ignoring.
I wish my dog
other
understood
children
that I was sorry.
that
I'm
still
not
are
entirely
with
sure
me
that she does.
because I can't stop obsessing
So when I
about the one
behave
that
poorly,
isn't.
I take
You
it
have to
really
be sick of the
personally.
stress it might be putting on yourself and your spouse. You can be miserable.
We got to get rid of these
I was
ditches, you
miserable
guys.
for a long time. I was
These
miserable, but I
ditches,
also
they just
realized
keep
that this
taking
was a
people. They
process.
keep taking our
And
kids.
I knew that I didn't want to be
Sorry,
miserable my
moving
whole
my
life.
desk around.
And especially as we get older, our time is less. Our timelines are shorter on this planet. Our time, we don't have as much time.
Right.
And so do you want to spend your time in misery? Or do you want to spend your time picking up the pieces?
Spend your time making yourself better. Make yourself like the best person you possibly can be and understand like it's okay that you've messed up in the past. You can have a great relationship with your daughter, man. Go to therapy. Please go to therapy. I know it's like really hard for people who are thinky, and you can tell that she's very thinky. But it helps. It helps you like break down some of the things that you are, some of the ways that you think that aren't serving you, which it seems like if you are still in a no contact relationship with your daughter, there are a lot of things that you're thinking that aren't serving you. Ash said, I'm giving you to God is more of a you're no longer my problem way of telling the child they aren't worth being treated with respect or consideration. I can see that. Michelle said, the thing about giving them to God is like to say that God is going to change their decision of going no contact with her. God will change their mind. As we get older is the first correct thing that Diana said this whole video. Remarkable
And
stuff.
giving love to those
I like that
around
you guys are
who
as
still
smart-assed
around
as I
you.
am.
And if you have nobody, if you're all on your own, and some women are, finding community wherever you can of people who can accept you for who you are, who don't mind that your children don't talk to you.
That's a red flag,
community
though.
for everyone out there, but you
That's
have
a red
to
flag.
seek it out. You have to. This is a mindset thing. You really have to. Yes, you need to grieve. You need to feel the feelings.
Yeah.
You don't want to just shove
Okay.
them in a corner and not express them. You want to express them, but you need to express them and then regroup and then something's going to trigger you and you're going to express them again.
Okay.
And then you're going to regroup.
Accurate.
And this is the grieving process. This is the grieving process, and you need to have a vision of where you want to be on the other side.
Right. So I can understand that she's saying that this is a grieving process because she doesn't have a connection with her child, and that must be so incredibly painful. Totally get it. But the way that she keeps talking about it is like her child is literally not on this earth anymore. And that's really troubling to me because, and I keep bringing this back to me, not trying to be narcissistic, you guys. I keep bringing it back to me. But this is the type of thinking that I don't understand, because if my kid didn't want to talk to me, the worst thing that I could think is that they weren't alive anymore, or that they, that they were dead to me. Because at some point that could literally be the truth. And that child came out of me. Like, I love her so much. She's such a great person. I want everybody to love her and to support her. And I want her to like do all the things and feel all the great feelings and to have all the like amazing milestones in her life. And all of those milestones mean that she's alive. That's what I want for her. So to think of her as like dead to me is awful. Awful, because it's like a nightmare. I find it troubling. I find it really troubling.
I think you need to believe that you can get through this. You can get through this. You can have a fulfilling life.
Definitely, Yasmin.
With the children you have left.
Yasmin?
Or
Yasmin.
with the husband you have left. Or with the friends you have left if you're without family. You can go out and make friends even if you're alone. And
yes,
I know
and you
it's
should.
hard when you're sitting alone and you're depressed and you think nobody wants to hear about this, nobody cares. And I tell you, there is help for everyone out there. You have to seek it out. You just have to seek it out and be determined to get through this. Learn what you can. There are so many good books. There's a lot of good YouTubers out there.
Did you ever read that book?
There's just a lot of resources out there if you search for it.
The one about estranged parents?
All of them have
Did you ever do
something
that?
to offer, whether it's a psychiatrist or a therapist or just a regular mom or dad who's been through it, a support group, a Facebook group. There are so many.
Oh, you guys. A group. Kind of like the one that she runs. She's okay, so here's the deal. She's like really, like, I know that people don't, like, once you see somebody as bad, you don't want to see them, any part of them as good, but she is actually very good at what she does, right? She's very good at marketing. She's very good at keeping people talking. She understands the value of like negative feedback is still good feedback to some degree when you're like trying to make money. But my God, like that's masterful. Like, I have such a hard time myself, like bringing things back to ways that I can make money, because it feels like, oh, well, I don't want to put anyone out. She like immediately brought it back to like support groups, like support groups. And I bet like I actually saved these to my hard drive so that I didn't have to give her more views. But I bet at the end of her YouTube video, she has like some sort of like link or something. I'd have to check, but that's just like masterful. She's very good at what she does. And imagine how amazing a community she could make just based on her being able to talk to the camera, which is like really quite challenging, by the by. Just being able to talk to the camera and like string together like a thought, put together a script, edit it. Like, she could do so much good if she would just look at herself and put all of that effort into healing herself and then talking to people about it. She could do so much positive work in the world, but this is what we're getting. God forbid she finds Patreon. Shh. Shh. No. Shh. We don't talk about Patreon.
And I am telling you that you need to look at the millions of moments on the good side, that you really did do your best to raise this child, feed this child, shelter this child, give this child the toys and the friends and the experiences and the enrichment.
Stuff you're supposed to do in an ideal world.
The best you could do. We just have to deal with the cards that we're dealt and do the best we can with what we have. And even our kids who've left us for whatever reason are doing the best they can with what they have.
Well, that's nice.
And they're just trying to figure it out for themselves. So I think...
And they're dead to you.
Be compassionate for them. be compassionate for ourselves, be compassionate for the other parents that are going through this.
This is actually a nice sentiment.
Just remember all the good stuff we did. All the good stuff we did. We need to remember all the good stuff we did. And, just take note of what we didn't do well. Learn from it. If there's some
you
way
aren't
we can
doing
impart
that
wisdom to someone else, maybe help the next generation so that they don't have this problem with their kids.
You aren't doing that, though.
It's time. It's time for us to let go and find other ways to give back to people who do want our love. To people who
your child wants your love.
Feel that we have some value to offer.
Oh
and,
my
we
God.
did our jobs. The kids are gone. This is our time.
And that's an amazing
now.
point too, to somebody who feels like we have something to offer. Like everything has to be about transaction, Alexa. We're kind and compassionate, but we can look at a situation and be like, oh, well, that's appropriate.
Bask in the sun a little bit after a long, hard day's work. And it's okay.
Bask in the sun.
It's okay if it didn't turn out
She
perfect.
really does like
it's okay
patting
if
herself on the back for the bare
they're
minimum.
gone. It's okay if, it's okay if they never talk to us again. I know it's hard to believe, but it's okay. It just...
Right, you'll
It is what
survive,
it
but
is.
it's not ideal. And if you
leave
can
it
change
to
it, why
God.
the
If you believe in
fuck
God,
wouldn't you try?
Leave it to the universe. Leave it to...
Leave it to God.
fate. Leave it to random chance. Leave it to nature. Whatever it is, just let it be.
Oh my God.
Let it be, and do your
Okay.
best
Sure.
to find places
Right.
to apply yourself
Mhm.
where you can be of service to others.
Fine.
I think being of service to others is one of the best ways to
Yeah,
claw
give
your
back.
way out of this hole.
absolutely. But
Be feeling like
don't
you're
do
in.
things just because
Look
you
on
want to
the good
feel like a
side.
good person.
Be of service to others. Compassion for them. Compassion for yourself. Mindset. You can do this.
Like, none of those things are bad things, but at the same time, like, it starts in your own home. There's this thing that people do when they're really self-absorbed that is like all about like giving back to others and like doing all of the charity and doing all the nice things for people that are not inside your home, and you treat the people in your house like shit. And honestly, that's what this reminds me of. It's like, go out and find your community and like do all these things and learn and grow and whatever. Those are all like good things in theory. But if you're not doing the work in your home, then all of that's just for show. That's a facade that you put up because you want to feel like a good person without doing the hard work of looking at yourself and being like, these are all the ways that I failed my child. And how can I get her back? How can I show her that I love her enough to tear myself apart and build myself back up to be a healthy parent? Because that's what you have to do. And it sucks. It sucks. It sucks to look at yourself as like a real human being with like a lot of flaws that you have to fix. That's fine for that to be hard. And you do deserve community, and you do deserve to take pleasure in those small wins. You absolutely do. But you also have to look at yourself and say, these are the ways that I failed. And until I get my shit together, my house is not in order. So it doesn't matter all the like charity and good works that I do. When my house is not in order, that's like my foundation. All that charity and good works and community and like peace and love and all of that stuff, it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just the facade that I put up to hide the fact that my foundation is crumbling. Whatever. All right, on to the next one. You guys let me know when you're fucking done. So she did a series of like, this is where I'm like getting a little bit more of a like, hey, maybe there's going to be some like good stuff in here vibe, except for the fact that one of them is titled Your Child Just Dumped You, Now What? That doesn't bode well. But she did a series of like, you're estranged from your child. Here's how we're going to move forward. Here's some of the things that you're going to feel. And my hope, I pray to God, to anything, that like this has some positive stuff that we can be okay with. Whatever. Even the service to others is transactional. Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, sometimes you do need to just let it be.
So in the fall of 2020, our firstborn child kicked us out of
Absolutely.
her
Inverted
life
vampire.
and
Trying to imagine what
went
that
no
is.
contact and has not spoken to us since. I shared my story here on YouTube in kind of a different way than is usually done on YouTube. I
Not really.
made it a little bit artsy.
Yeah, you did.
It was just a different way to communicate what it feels like to deal with a loss of this magnitude. It was from my perspective as a mom going through it. I can't know my daughter's
Oh,
side
yeah.
because she
We're going to have to
refuses
look at a
speak
lot
to
of
us.
puppy
I
pics.
did this video
Or the new
for
like mini
benefit of other
hippo. That's been my new
parents. It's been
thing.
almost a year now that it's
Can't
been
stand
out.
is so cute.
I hemmed and hawed about telling that story. But when my daughter started talking about her estrangement on TikTok publicly, I figured, well, if she can speak about her situation, I can speak about mine. And the reason I did it was because I had a feeling that there were other parents out there going through the same thing, but were hiding it
Right.
because they're ashamed. It is a shameful thing. I mean, when your child
Right.
kicks you out of your life, everyone, is like, what did you do? And that's what we were wondering too. The response to this video has been an incredible mix of heartfelt support from parents who have either gone through it or who have friends going through it or who have a
Yeah, I haven't watched
high
any of them
level
yet, LR.
empathy for understanding what it might feel like if they were to go through it. But on the flip side of that, there was also an incredible amount of outrage that came as a result of this video as well, which was actually really surprising. I mean, I'm just a mom.
How was that surprising?
Sharing my experience. Granted, I am sharing it in a bit of a cinematic vlog essay style, so it's not the usual way of sharing, but it is.
It's not that you were sharing your experience. That alone would have been just fine. It's that you painted your daughter like the villain in your story. That's insane.
My story, it's how I felt, it's how I progressed. And from the comments I've received from parents going through it, I know that they completely get it. This is so similar to their experience, and these were the people that I made this video for. So our estrangement started with an angry letter from our daughter.
Oh, she is not giving up on that angry letter business. Look, she's going to do it all over again in a shorter format. That is crazy. Angry letter. And yeah, it might have been angry, but like, can you not peel it back and see that the layers are there for it to be anger maybe on the outside and then hurt, deep wound of hurt and needing a mom. My God, man. And yeah, of course, like, what did Ophelia say? Does she know about confirmation bias? Like, right. Like, of course you had a lot of parents who were like really supportive and on your side because they're going through the same thing because they're like you, man. Like, my God, you're not going to get people who have done the same shit that you've done being like, yeah, I really feel like a horrible person too. And I have things that I need to do better most of the time, right? Like, you're not going to get people who are still in that like defensive and angry point of view being like, you need to look at yourself because that's what I'm doing, even though I'm still angry and defensive. I'm sorry. Like, that felt all over the place as far as like an opinion. But like, she just like, this is the part that like really gets under my skin. She's about to just start painting her daughter in a negative light again, and it like pisses me off.
Just explaining that it was pretty much over politics.
She is entrenched in her narrative.
2020, a very contentious election year. She was on one side, we were on the other. I personally didn't talk about my political beliefs because why bother arguing with that? It's like arguing Jesus versus Allah. There's no point. My husband was a little more supportive in his feelings about it, but in the end, 90% of that letter was about politics. I will never share that letter because it is not for public consumption. End of story. The result.
You'll never share the letter because it's not for public consumption, but you'll make her look like an asshole in every other way you possibly can. And to be honest with you, if it's about politics when it comes to that year, and knowing now that I keep saying she, they are LGBTQ plus, and they're going through their own journey of figuring out who they are. Like, it makes sense if you have a parent that's supporting a side that actively is rooting for your demise. Like, that makes sense, right? So it's not just about politics. When people say it's about politics, they're not looking at the fact that politics is about more than just like what candidate you're voting for. It's about how you want the world to look and how you want to shape the world. And if you want to shape the world avoiding a certain kind of person and making it harder for them to be alive, then yeah, your child, who is probably, of that nature, is not going to want to be around you. I'm trying not to get like entirely cut off from the YouTube algorithm. Sometimes if you say things, they don't like it. So I'm trying to hint around, but you guys get it. Like, politics is not always just about politics. If you have one side that's actively trying to remove people from the equation, that's not just politics, right? That's like, you don't want me to be alive. You don't want me to have rights. That makes sense.
Though, was that my husband and I were absolutely stunned.
I won't show the letter because it contains a lot of incriminating material.
Just came out of left field. Absolute left field. We had always had a good relationship with this daughter.
Because she fawned over you. Because she never stood up for herself.
She was just, honestly, she was a great child. We didn't have any big problems with her that we knew of. We were always there for her. She was an introvert, so we gave her space. And for this kind of angry rant over politics, which she had never cared about before in her life, was just completely, it took us aback. We were shocked.
If she was an introvert and you basically didn't hear anything about anything from her because she was an introvert and she always did what she was supposed to, so you would stay off her back, then yeah, it makes sense that she wouldn't talk about her politics with you, but it's not confusing. Like, you should understand. And it's one thing to believe whatever you're going to believe and to vote for whoever you're going to vote for, but then to be surprised when your child doesn't feel comfortable around you is insane. That's just baloney. Pardon my French.
Literally did not know what to do. There was no playbook for what to do in this situation. So because we really didn't know how to react, we went through every emotion possible. Of course, there was shock. And then there was more shock and confusion.
Exactly, LR.
And sort of, what do we do here? And what caused this?
Yes, Jestery.
Yes, there was self-reflection. Like, what could we have done to make her so mad? Why is she so upset about an election? Of all things. Honestly, whether you put A or B into office, it almost doesn't matter at this point because the deep government runs the show. So why all the anger over?
I can't even start with this.
We were blindsided, absolutely blindsided. So the emotions ran from
hologram.
The confusion.
She definitely cared about it, and she was afraid she would be like yelled at probably, or like talked down to.
Resentment, bitterness.
And Gwen is right. Impossible to tell a parent you don't feel safe around them when you don't feel safe around them.
We felt betrayed after all of the love and energy and effort and goodwill that we had put into having our child and raising our child in the best way that we knew how and giving her a nice childhood, or so we thought. She didn't want for anything. Materially, we gave her the, whatever attention she was willing to accept. Like I said, she was an extreme introvert, so we did give her space as well so that she could recoup. We had been talking to her, through college, after college. Generally, we'd had an open, caring relationship where she felt free to come to us with so many issues. She came to us with some really serious issues. We talked it out. Everything was fine. And so to be rejected over something like politics,
you don't know that, though. You simply don't know that. You don't know that what you said worked because you don't have much insight into how your behavior is going to land with the people around you. And I get that for a lot of people, like that insight is hard won. I totally get it. but you still refuse to admit that when you do something, you're probably going to have a specific response from the people around you. Like, you're just not able to make those two things match up. So you have an idea of what response you're going to get, and then when you don't get the response, you're baffled, or you're confused, or you're hurt, or you're defensive. You just need to work on it a little bit, man. Like, you don't know that what you said to her landed in the way that you think that it did, because you don't have much insight into your own behavior just based on these. Obviously, I don't know her. I'm going to go ahead and say that, but based on these videos, her level of insight about her behavior and how it lands with the people around her, it's just not very reliable. And I don't always have insight about myself. I'm sure you guys have moments where you don't have insight about yourself. So that's like a normal human struggle. But when it's this consistent, it's something that you really have to work out. Really.
It just seemed out of whack. It just seemed disproportionately
Kizzy,
awful.
I know.
You know, it's
I thought
just
about like having
politics.
wine, but I
So
don't like drinking.
that was our story.
Like, especially
Every
like when I'm
estrangement
just
is unique,
doing something,
but
like
that was our story.
watching something.
So this began
It doesn't
the
work for
most
me.
painful journey of our lives. We spent 3 years just kind of bumbling around, trying to figure out, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we react? What's the right thing to do? What's the
Yeah.
wrong thing to do?
Sekhmet, it
We're
is.
just trying to
It's
figure it out.
absolutely
We didn't
challenging
really
for
know
you
where
as
to
a child to be
turn,
like, okay, well,
and there
this
was a lot
level
of
of security that I've
rumination.
enjoyed is not
But
going to be
over
possible
time,
because I
we
don't
did
feel
turn to
safe.
various sources. We learned a lot about this process, and in time, we have been able to move through it, work it out. And I would say that healing is a
Have
spectrum.
you, though?
So on the healing spectrum, I'm
Don't
generally
feel
about
like you have.
95% healed. I don't know that I'll ever be 100% healed, because she is my daughter and I still love her no matter what. But 95% is, I think, pretty good. And my husband and I are able to move on with our lives. We're finding new purpose.
Oh, I just wanted to highlight the Jack's comment. The essay, The Missing Reasons, talks a lot about how parents actually do know what it is and can't accept it. I'll have to read that later.
New joy, new memories, new traditions.
Actually, I'm going to write that
And
down.
I want to help you do the same. We've essentially let go with love. And while that door is always open for her if she ever wants to come through it again, we understand that she may never come through it again, and that's her choice, and so be it. And we will go on and make the best of our lives. Our happiness doesn't depend on what she does or doesn't decide to do.
Good.
So
It
we
should have
are
always been
essentially
that
free.
way.
Now, I just want to say here, I'm not a therapist. I'm just a mom who's gone through this hellscape, and I'm here to help anybody else who's interested in my experience get through their own personal hellscape. If you need therapy, get a therapist. This is just a different kind of approach. I'm just sharing my experience, and hopefully it will help someone out
If you
there.
need therapy,
So I'm creating this
if
short
you
video
have an
series
estranged
to help
child,
you
you
go
for
from
sure need
heartbreak to
therapy.
healing, so that you can find the joy and purpose in your life again. I've broken this down into 6 stages, and I'm
Oh
just
my
going to
God, there are
briefly
going to be
walk you
6
through
of
what they
these?
are so that you'll know what to
Oh,
expect.
thank you.
Stage 1
Girly
is
Pop saying they
ground
moved on,
zero.
but she
The
keeps
first
yapping
video, we're
about
going
it.
to talk
Yep.
about the initial shock period and how to
You don't
handle
have to
that.
move on.
Stage
Your kid
2
cut off
is
contact.
the
It's fine.
aftershocks phase. It's like,
All right, we're
okay,
not going to
you
watch this
inject
part. I don't give a shit. Ophelia, she puts a lot of pressure on her child being the one who has to repair the relationship. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably how it always was, because the kid has to earn the love and the respect, right? Kizzy, the gross part to me is her statements that she hopes her daughter finds these videos and pointing out that all the other parents agree with me, not you. Shameful. Yeah, it kind of does come off that way. Like she needs the other party to recognize that other people agree with her. Kevin said, I'm pretty sure she deletes comments that don't agree with her too. I remember seeing some in her recent video. Yeah, I think she deleted that video, right? Or she privated it. Something. I initially wanted to react to that one, and then I tried to find it and I was like, oh, so I guess that one did not do well for her ego, because ultimately, like, that's probably what it is. Either like the comments got, and I can understand, like, if the comments get too out of hand and you can't really moderate it, then there's no, like, if it's hurting your mental health, then obviously you should just delete the video or private it so that, like, you don't have to deal with it. Obviously. And that makes sense in a lot of cases. But with this kind of the last one that she posted that she actually privated or like deleted or whatever, it was like really inflammatory. So I have a feeling that it just didn't land the way that she wanted it to. And it really hurt her ego, and not in like the normal, like, you know, somebody's calling me ugly or saying that I'm a witch, or like some of the ones that I get are really funny. Someone said recently, like, she's 35, she barely even knows anything. It's like, oh, you think I'm 35? You're cute. I like you. They think I'm young. I told my best friend, I was like, they think I'm 35. I like that. That makes me happy. Not that, like, obviously getting older is a gift, right? Not everybody gets to get old. But it just made me laugh that that was the thing that they were coming with, like, that I can't possibly know what I'm talking about because I'm 35. Like, no 35-year-old has ever had a good idea. But yeah, or that I'm a witch, or I have Satan in me. That's my favorite. I'm like, aw, he likes me. But yeah, I guess it just didn't land the way that she wanted it to. And she ended up privating it. So that's the one that I really wanted to react to, because that's when she put her I'm not political on full display. Ophelia, I like it when people call me a witch because I am a witch. It's like, yeah, thanks, man. I try to make it obvious for you guys. I like it when people tell me that I look intimidating, and I'm like, and yet here you are speaking to me. Why? Why are you doing that? No, I'm not 35. You're cute. I like you. I am rapidly approaching my mid-40s. Okay, let's watch this. Fuck.
My child just dumped me. Now what? Welcome to ground zero.
Right?
This is the initial shock phase of
Yes,
parental
Bopper.
estrangement.
I remember
So,
feeling like when I hit
going
30, I
into
was like,
this,
oh yeah, I'm older
you need
now.
to
I'm
know
hitting my
something that
stride.
is
And then when I hit
extremely
40, I was
important,
like,
and you
oh
will
my
not
God,
succeed.
time
You
is
will never
marching.
get over this if you don't understand this one point. Mindset is the key to healing. You have to know that you can do this. Healing
Accurate.
begins in the mind, and how you perceive your estrangement impacts how you're going to recover from it. So
Okay.
you're in the shock phase, and you need to know that your reaction is normal. Okay, however you react is probably normal. There is really
Yes.
no right or wrong way to react to
no.
this trauma. And I know trauma.
Here's where I'm going to get some shit. I can already tell I'm going to get shit for this. But I just want you to like hang with me for a second, because I promise you it's going to make sense. Or at least it makes sense to me. It might not make sense to you. That's fine. So your feelings are valid. Your feelings are real. They don't always come from a place that is true. So when this mom had a defensive reaction, her immediate feeling was like, I did a great job and I don't understand, and like I'm being defensive, and that's a valid feeling because she's feeling it. And you don't get to tell somebody what a valid feeling is. However, it's not based in reality. So you have to be able to look at your feelings and be like, is this true though? Like, I can understand why I'm feeling like this, but is it actually true? And for some people, that mindset obviously is not going to work, because some people haven't been taught how to actually recognize and label their feelings. So if that's the case, if you have a hard time and you're always intellectualizing your feelings, don't practice this. But if you are very defensive in a lot of ways, and you find that that's like a problem, it might just be something to be like, okay, wait, step back. Is my feeling coming from a valid place? Is it actually coming from a place of truth? Or am I just feeling hurt? And that's why I'm reacting this way. Ophelia said, impact over intent model. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you're going to react poorly, and everyone does at some point. Sometimes you're going to react in a defensive way, and that's totally fine. However, you have to be able to then step back and be like, okay, but was my reaction actually justified based on all of these things that are going on? And sometimes the answer is just no. It just wasn't. And I don't think she ever got to that point. I don't think she got to the point to say, like, actually, I was really angry and resentful and dismissive. And at no point in time was that actually a valid reaction from me. Like, it's okay that I was hurt and that I was defensive at first, but it wasn't actually based in truth, right? Based on what I can see. obviously, I don't know all the ins and outs of this woman's life.
A big word that gets thrown around a lot these days. But if you're an average middle class American parent and you spent your whole life raising your child, doing the best you could, figuring it out.
Did she just say abuse is a big word that gets thrown around a lot these days?
Thought you had a good relationship, and then suddenly, bam, it's gone, and you're evil or whatever.
Oh
it's
my
a shock.
fucking God.
And it is a trauma. Trauma is relative. Okay, sure,
my
it's
comfort
not
bunny
war.
slippers.
It's not getting a leg chopped off. It is a different kind of trauma, but it is still a very traumatic experience. Another thing to understand about estrangement as you're in this shock phase is that it's not all you, okay? Sure, it's some you, some them, but it's not 100% you. It's
right, no relationship is 100%, but you were the parent, so you had all the power.
Everywhere.
The actual fuck.
29% of Americans report being estranged from some family member.
Okay, honestly, people need to stop quoting this 29% thing like it's some sort of like, oh, we're just having this like giant issue and this is a societal issue. Like, you're just hearing about it more, for one. And of that 29%, a lot of it is parents who already didn't really have much to do with the kid. So when the kid became an adult, it wasn't a big leap that that kid was not going to try to talk to them anymore, right? If you've got one parent that's actually not in the like caregiving role very often as the kid is growing up, and then like maybe the parents get divorced, then that kid is not going to go out of their way to talk to the parent who never really did much with them, who never really was a caregiver for them. Like, that's a normal reality. You can't pretend like just because you were a part of creating a child that you were forever owed a relationship with them, even when you do no work to foster one. That's insane.
27% of American adults have cut off contact with a family member, lasting an average 4.5 years, according to Carl Pilmer. And this
seriously,
is
Ash.
in the Western world, it's a trend. 1 in 5 families in the UK are affected by estrangement, according to the BBC. And
that's proof that we have a parenting issue, not a child
Australia,
issue.
New Zealand, Canada, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, who tell me it's happening all across Europe. The other thing to understand about estrangement is that it comes in many forms, and there are many types and reasons for estrangement from family members.
Right.
Number one is, physical estrangement. You're just apart because you live in different states. Emotional estrangement, you just don't relate to them. Estrangement initiated by children, that's the most common. Sometimes estrangement is initiated by the parents because the child has an addiction, it's on drugs, is just mentally ill or abusive. Then there's...
I love that she did not get into any of the reasons that American parents specifically, I can't really talk about any other parents, but American parents specifically of certain faith groups will alienate or estrange their children when their children do something that they don't find to be in keeping with how they were raised. Let's just say it that way. And I know that several people on this chat right now know what I'm talking about. That is so clearly how she feels about just like tying it into like a lot of times when she talks about her daughter, she talks about like mental illness. Her daughter, I keep saying her daughter. I'm not entirely sure how her child's, I don't know. I try not to make assumptions, right? But she keeps saying her daughter, so I'm going to say her daughter. Her daughter has actively talked about being part of the LGBTQ plus community, ADHD, and the fact that this woman, when she talks about parents estranging children, often talks about like mental illness, or like if a child is estranged from a parent, maybe it's about the mental illness. It's like, what the fuck are you thinking, man? You're making it so obvious that you actually don't care. You're not as open-minded as you think you are. That just like really pisses me off. Sorry. I don't know if any of that made sense. I was just on a tangent.
Just the mutual estrangement. I don't get along with you. You don't get along with me. We just don't talk. There's situational estrangement. Something happened. You step away for a while.
Right.
And I did a survey on my YouTube channel in December 2023, and it's not scientific. I just had ideas in my mind about what caused estrangement.
You know, people
So I
have
put them
actually
out there in a
created
poll. The reasons
surveys
that most
that are
commonly were given
scientific,
by most people,
and you
and
could
I
just
think
look
it
those
was
up.
over, almost 2,000 people answered this poll. 59% of them said interpersonal problems. So in that category, reasons that split families from within include verbal, physical, or sexual abuse, bullying, neglect, divorce, parental alienation, mental illnesses
You can't
on either side,
talk about kids having mental
misunderstandings,
illness and not talk
destructive
about the
behaviors,
tie
or
of
substance abuse.
like
There
parents and
are
how they
also
raise their
external
children.
reasons
Like
for
that's
estrangement, and they're
partially,
often around
most of the
the
time,
spouse
about
or the
you.
partner
And there
or
is some
friends
like,
turning the child
you know, there's
against the
nature versus
family.
nurture. There is some nature in there. Like if you're more prone based on your genetics to having certain issues like bipolar or like schizophrenia, like obviously, you know, you can't control everything as a parent, but generally speaking, most people who have what she calls mental illnesses, those mental illnesses like depression are going to come from like childhood adverse events, right? And you know, I'm not a therapist obviously, so please do not take my word for it. Do your own research. Like I do my research and sometimes I don't get it right. So please, please, please just do your own research. But I find it strange that so many parents are like, I didn't raise my daughter to be like this. I didn't raise my son to be like this. It's like your child is a direct reflection of how you raise them. So yeah. And some of that is going to be like, obviously, if you're gay, man. That's just always been a part of you. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing mentally unwell about it. It just is what it is. And the fact that she always talks about like mental illness and then like alternate lifestyles and people shoving it down your throat. Like she has absolutely no self-awareness and it just drives me insane. I feel like I keep like ranting and not really getting anywhere with my points with these things, but it just like pisses me off to such a degree that I have a hard time keeping it together. Ophelia, like I am very open about my BPD because it's often demonized and I don't want to be ashamed of it, but also because people need to understand it's something that was done to me by my parents, right? Yeah. And Kizzy, you're right. Autism and ADHD are not mental illnesses. You're absolutely right. And, you know, I don't blame her for not recognizing the signs of autism in her daughter. I don't, because, you know, young children are socialized very differently based on whether or not they're, you know, assigned female or male at birth. And that's just a thing. I don't think it's right, but it is a thing. But the fact that she does, that she then said, like, maybe that's why, like, we had so many issues with her. Maybe that's why this is going on. It's like, man, this is the time that your kid would really need you. If she just got this diagnosis, if she's trying to figure out her life, she needs all the support she can get. She wouldn't cut off people who are perfectly healthy to be around. Sekhmet, you said, gotta ask, because you seem like a kind and sensible person. Thank you so much. I got no compassion or sympathy for that woman. I know I shouldn't let that push me to anger, but should I try to be more sympathetic? I think it's possible to see the good in people and also see that you yourself could be capable of like some of the things that she does. I know that I see some of the things that I'm capable of in her. And I think that's the only reason that I'm able to be as sympathetic, because I choose to look at myself and say, I could do any number of things. And I have done things that I don't think are right, that I don't think are good, that I am ashamed of. And I never want to get to a point where I just like take that for granted, right? That I could be like her. So the fact that I'm willing to look at it and say, hey, I can see how I might be defensive like this in some ways. And I can see how I've been like that in the future. And I don't want to be like that. I think that's like the biggest way to maintain sympathy. You're not always going to be able to like have 100% sympathy for people. That's fine. I think part of that really is based on like us as a species. Like part of how we have evolved as a social species is to look at antisocial behaviors and to proactively say, no, you are not allowed in our space, because that's how we were able to survive with each other and thrive and develop into Homo sapiens. But yeah, I think as long as you are willing to look at your own behavior and say, hey, man, I could be like this, or I have been similar to this, and to make a choice not to be like that, and to remember in your mind that any of us are capable of these kinds of things, then you can have more sympathy for people. I don't know if that made any sense, but that's how I approach it. Ash said, it's not up to the person causing harm to tell the person who they hurt they're not actually hurt. Absolutely. You don't get to decide how somebody feels about your behavior. Man, wouldn't it be a much easier life if you did?
Or cultural differences as they move in a different direction, sexual orientation, gender identity, career, religion, differing values, politics, their perception of you being overly controlling, manipulative, or them feeling irritated, agitated,
their
traumatized,
perception of you, not you actually
or
being
other
controlling.
mental health issues that they may have around their perception of you as a parent. Other external factors, behaviors
right, so it's not
leading to
reality, it's their
estrangement
perception.
can be modeled from one generation to the next. Sometimes no reasons are given when a child cuts ties, they just disappear. And so the parents are left guessing.
Maybe.
Or sometimes the reasons seem kind of minor in the parents' eyes. So they're left guessing what's the real cause here, because this reason that she's given
Jestry, gender identity.
Not a big enough reason to cut people off. There are
Gender
cultural
identity.
forces at play. We are swimming against the tide of history. A lot of estranged children don't like to believe this because they are caught up in the tide of history, and because people don't study history anymore, they don't necessarily see it. And when you're young, you haven't been on the planet for as long, you haven't seen as many things.
Where are you going with
and
this,
you're
Diane?
just in it. I recommend reading
Where
The
are you
Fourth
going?
Turning, a book by William Strauss and Neil
Liz,
Howe. They
I'm
are
sorry you
historians
felt
who
that
studied
way.
thousands of years of human
I'm
history.
just so sorry.
And
Poor
they
thing.
identified patterns that happen every 80 years or so, and then there's even larger patterns that happen,
It gives you
surrounding
more
those
power
within
and
every
agency
200
too
years.
in the world.
And according to this framework, we're now living in a cycle of history where we are in 4.
No, she's going to do this shit again. She's going to do this shit again where she's talking about like the 4 turns or whatever. And yeah, history repeats itself. Absolutely accurate. And yeah, humans, not that creative when it comes to how we respond to certain stimuli. So yeah, all of that's normal. Everything that she's saying is technically correct, but then she's trying to tie it in this roundabout fucking bonkers way to estrangement, as though it makes any sense. When you have a pattern of people treating children like property and demeaning and degrading them and treating them like subhuman until they earn their humanity by growing up, then you're going to have a history of people slowly but surely not wanting anything to do with their caregivers. That's not complicated. It's not confusing in the least. So it's fucking baffling that people want to have all these excuses for why people didn't dump their parents before, and now they're all of a sudden starting to dump them. They wanted to dump their parents. Why don't you trust me on that one? Please. They wanted to dump their parents. They just had no agency in the world, and it was a lot harder to survive. Now they have the option to dump their abusive parents, or parents that manipulated them or made them feel small and insignificant, or like used them as some sort of prize for having been an adult all these years, or used them for free labor for when they're old and infirm. And then they're able to actually move away from them, and they're able to have the support of a larger community, right? Because these kids, hopefully, I hope, these estranged children are finding community that's bigger than just their nuclear family. Because in no way, shape, or form is kids leaving their parents all about the kids just not being present in the history and not understanding how things work. It's like, yeah, I understand how things work. And also, I don't have to tolerate someone being mean to me. I don't have to tolerate someone demeaning me and treating me like the choices that I make aren't good enough because they're not your choices. Like, you don't have a kid to put yourself into them. You have a kid and you say, you are your person. And I'm just here. I'm just here to guide you and to help you where I can. And to see around corners for you. That's what I tell my kid all the time. All I can do is see around corners for you. If I've done something before and I know kind of what's going to happen, I tell you about it. At the end of the day, I can't force you to make the choices that I make. I can tell you why I wouldn't make that choice. That's it. If you leave an open line of communication with your kid, then they're not going to want to not have anything to do with you. They're going to feel open to say, you hurt me in these ways, and I want to talk about it, and I want to be with you, and I want to fix it. No kid orphans themselves for no reason.
And we are moving quickly into crisis. And that began in around 2008, and it will probably continue until around 2030.
It began about
some kind of
1,000 years ago.
Destruction.
This is kind of like just the way that it's been going on.
New World Order. Even Ray
Industrialization,
Dalio, who is one of
200
the most
years ago.
successful investors on the planet, in his book Principles for the Changing World Order, it's not an easy read,
that world
but
order
it's a good
thing.
read, where he actually also
that.
takes a look at history from a different perspective, from the investment perspective, to see.
Yes, a shepherd, a librarian,
he feels
perhaps,
like if
if
he
needed.
understands what happened in the past, he can better prepare for what's going to happen in the future as an investor. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars doing it, and he also has identified cycles.
And we all
are
walk to
now
school
in,
backwards,
and he acknowledges that we're
uphill
in a
with no
destructive
shoes.
cycle. And so when we're in a destructive cycle, the forces of culture work against the traditional units like family or organizations that worked before.
Absolutely, Kizzy. I actually think
So there are
childism
things
is a
working
real
against you.
problem. I think
I made a
that
whole video about
children
it.
are
I'll
the
link it
last
somewhere.
reasonable
But just to kind of list
reasonable
specifically
group
some
of
these
people to
cultural
demean and dehumanize. And I will forever say that. And that's not to say that I think it's right. That's to say I think it's been socialized into us that children are not humans. They're subhuman until we give them humanity.
forces at play: fading family values, rising individualism or narcissism, media tribalism.
Yes, Chestery.
Mental health awareness is big now.
Whittling our own spoons.
I would say therapy has almost become a cult in some circles. Increased mobility. People can just
What?
move wherever they
Therapy
want.
has become
There
a
have been
cult?
cultural shifts in
Y'all.
authority. Economic factors
I could be
are
a cult
definitely
leader if I
playing
went
into
back
it.
to
It's much
school.
harder for young people to get a good start and do what was traditionally done in years past.
Right. But
There
wouldn't
are
that
legal
make
factors
people
that are
want to
changing
be with
how
their
laws
parents?
work in our countries. Cultural, political, and religious differences, of course, generational differences, normalization of estrangement. So these cultural forces are all
There's no normalization of estrangement. In fact, the more I read, the more I think that people are just guilt tripped. The minute they say, I can't have a relationship with this parent or like my sibling, they're guilt tripped. And the first thing that people say is always like, well, what if they die? It's like, well, yeah, that would suck. And I don't want that. But at the same time, like, they're abusing me. Like, we've come so far. Well, we haven't come that far, but we've come like a couple of baby steps forward in saying like women shouldn't stay with like abusive partners, right? But at the same time, when you say anything about a parent or a family member being abusive to you or being cruel to you or being demeaning or dehumanizing to you or treating you like property, you are expected to just be like, oh, but that's your mom. It's like, yeah, incidentally. And also, this person is awful to me. I can't be myself around them. Why would I stay with someone I can't be myself around? Nobody wants to not have a mom. Like, that's just a reality, right? Nobody wants to not have a mom. The only time mom is not safe the only time mom is not like wanted is when mom is not safe. Every human wants to have a deep connection with the person that they came from because we are hardwired for that. So the fact that so many people are saying, I can't have a relationship with the person who gave birth to me or the person that raised me, even if they didn't give birth to me, that's a big statement. And it's absolutely insane that this woman can't even take that into consideration. that she doesn't take into consideration the biological imperative to seek comfort from a parent or from a guardian. That's just bonkers to me. Just the fact that it was a caretaker I had complete vulnerability to made the abuse worse. Yeah, you were just a little guy. You were just a little tiny person. You had no control. You had no power. And when you grow up in that kind of system where the parent has all the power and uses it indiscriminately, that becomes a real problem for you as an adult. And the fact that these parents act like it comes out of nowhere is just, it's ridiculous. Bonks. Total bonks.
At play right now. So some of the things you're going to go through are the shock and disbelief. That's right out of the gate. That's what we experienced. And, because you don't really necessarily even know this is a thing. Like when this happened to us, I didn't even know estrangement was a trend. I had no idea.
It's not a trend.
And I continued to reach out because I thought that's what moms are supposed to do. Like I had this idea in my head that a good mom, reaches out to her child. Are you okay? Can I help? What can I do?
Right.
And never gives up.
Sure.
Because what kind of mom gives up on their child? So I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't realize at the time that in today's world, that was overstepping a critical boundary. You often...
In today's world, in any fucking world, in any world, if you are told, I don't want to be around you, I don't want you contacting me unless there's an emergency, that's a normal boundary. Like, you can't go up to somebody and be like, I'm going to keep calling you over and over and texting you and following you online and commenting on your posts. They'll say you're a stalker. They'll get a restraining order against you. When your adult child says, don't contact me, that means don't contact me. And I know that that really sucks. I can feel that that would be an awful, awful place to be in as a mom. However, it is not up to you to decide what a normal boundary is. If your child needed space from you, they just needed space. And it would take everything in my power to keep myself from contacting. But unfortunately, that's just what you have to do. You got to be an adult. You got to say they made a very clear boundary. They don't want me to call them right now. I've left the door open. All I can do is hope that they come back.
Struggle to accept that your relationship with your child has changed so drastically, often in a heartbeat, often at the slam of a door, an email sent, a ghosting, just
you weren't
what
ghosted
is often the reaction.
Stop saying ghosting.
You're going to go through shame and regret. These are two big ones. You're going to be thinking, first of all, what did I do so wrong that my child won't talk to me? And second of all, what is everyone else going to think of me because my child won't talk to me? I mean, you imagine that the first thing they're thinking is, what the heck did you do? And I do get that a lot, from people who don't know me. They're like, what the heck did you do in the comments on my channel? And this does lead you to question every little thing. Oh, was it that time where I didn't give her this? Or was it that time that I was late to her party?
Here we go again with I didn't give her this. I was late. I didn't give her the Snickers bar. I didn't let her go to the slumber party that she wanted to go to. That's not no basic bitch child would dump their parent for not getting the Snickers bar when they wanted it. That's not why kids go no contact. And then the other thing that she said was I get a lot of oh, what did you do from people who don't know me? I can tell you right now that you can think that you know what's happening behind closed doors and you have no clue. I can tell you that from personal experience, that people who thought that they knew what was going on in my life had no clue. Not a clue. Because there are some people who are great at acting. They're great at being amazing people when other people are watching, not people in their direct family unit, but other people. So you don't know. So when a kid feels so much pressure and so much, so many issues with their parents that they have to go no contact, I would, if I were you, just not even not even say anything about it because you have no clue. You don't know. You never know what's going on in somebody else's home. You just don't. I always default to trusting the kid first, and usually that's probably the right move. There are always going to be some kids who lie, right? There are always going to be some people who are not honest about what they went through when they were growing up. That's just a thing. However, most of the time, you're spot on if you trust the kid to talk about their own experience.
Or was it that time that, I yelled at her? What was it?
Yeah,
Every
Kizzy,
little action,
who
every
cares
little
about what other
decision,
people
every
think?
little
Nobody
mistake
should give
you
a
made
shit.
as a parent,
I would care
you
about my
start running
kid.
through that.
My kid doesn't want to be
Anger
around
and
me.
frustration are
That's what
also
hurts.
big emotions that you're going to experience. Anger is a natural and common response to estrangement. It seems like the dads move to this one more quickly than the moms. That's a generalization, but I've kind of seen that
I don't
in
know, man. You were
action.
angry
But
right
the
off the
moms
bat.
go through it too. The moms get angry. It may take them a little
Yeah.
longer to get to that, but they get angry, they get bitter, they get resentful. We all do it. It's a natural part of the grieving process. This
Yeah.
anger can also be
That's
directed
fair.
inwardly. So that means manifesting it at yourself as frustration and self-blame and sometimes self-hatred. It can get pretty bad.
Self-victimization.
You need to watch out for that one. Other common
It's just a way to
responses are
sidestep
sadness
responsibility.
and grief. So a deep sadness and sense of loss usually accompany estrangement. But the ambiguity of mourning someone who is still alive is confusing, which we're going to
Eddie,
address more
absolutely.
deeply in future videos. But the loss
There's
of
no
the
doubt in my
relationship
mind.
itself is a big deal. Losing the relationship is one thing, but also you're losing the future experiences that you may have expected to have with this child. Gathering for Christmas or Thanksgiving or
Oh my
Mother's Day
God.
brunch
Here we go
or
again.
meeting a grandchild that you hope to have one day. All of that stuff is lost when the child estranges.
That's
Fear
all
and
based around
anxiety.
like what she gets too. That's all based around like these are the things that I achieve from having this child in my life. It's not about seeing the look on her face when she has her first child or, watching her get the first promotion that she really wanted or watching her get her first 20,000 subs on Twitch, right? Because her daughter is a streamer. I think she said that. I hope I'm not like outing some portion. I'll say TikTok. I'm going to cut this up later into like a shorter something or another. So you guys pretend you didn't hear that. But yeah, like watching her get her first 20,000 subs and knowing that so many people enjoy her content and see how beautiful and amazing she is, just like I do. Those are like things about the child. She's talking about things that she gets, like going to Mother's Day brunch and shopping for Christmas presents and opening Christmas presents together and meeting my first grandchild. It's like all self-centered. It's self-based. It's not like these are the things that I want to see my daughter achieve and I feel like I can't see them because she won't talk to me.
Judgment can trigger fears and anxieties about your future, including whether or not the relationship can ever be repaired,
Whiskey.
along with fears about the well-being
Enjoy the
of
puppy
your
at
child.
least.
Where are they? What are they doing? Are they okay? Are they in trouble? These anxieties
Hologram,
often
yeah,
extend
definitely.
to your current relationships, especially your other children. So, if you have other children, you're going to naturally be paranoid that, oh my God, I don't want to ruin it with this child. And you may change your behaviors and become very anxious and stilted around this child because you fear doing
That makes
the same
sense to
thing
me.
or that child leaving too. And it can fear and anxiety can be super huge in estrangement.
Yeah,
And then
that
the
makes
last
sense.
couple of emotions that, that may crop up for you in the shock phase, and there are more, this is an exhaustive list, but these are kind of the most common
Oh,
ones.
Kizzy.
Hope and denial.
Yes.
They work together as sort of an evil team.
Selective
You can be
memory is what I call
fluctuating
it.
between hope for reconciliation and denial,
Magpies, I
situation,
really hope that I haven't
and
like outed anything
fluctuating between these
that
two
can help
is
people
normal.
find her.
I mean, denial is certainly a part of it. I can't believe she did this. This can't be real. This must be a phase. It's going to blow over. She's never done this before. Maybe she's just having a really bad week at work. I mean,
right. So she's never had the power to do that before, but now she doesn't actually require you to survive. So that's actually not a very valid point that you're making. Like, she's never done this before, so it'll blow over. Yeah, she needed you to live. It's kind of the thing about being a kid is that you actually have to have your parents, unfortunately. Like, you can't just, pick fruit off of a tree and rent a place to live by yourself if your parent is mean to you. So yeah, of course she would have never done this before. She never had the option to do it before. I think it's weird that that's like your first thought, is that it's a phase, because she's never done it before. Like that was ever a possibility.
The denial that kind of comes into your head. And then, with that, the opposite is like, well, I hope she
Kizzy definitely
calls me or whatever. You may cling to hope as a way to cope with the pain, as many people do, but this can hinder the acceptance and healing process. If you hold out that hope in sort of an exaggerated, unhealthy way
Maribel,
for 30
I'm so
years,
sorry.
Then you may be miserable for 30 years because your whole life is on hold, hoping that this child may someday come back. The shock and pain of emotion, basically, the way to think about what's happening here is that you are grieving over an ambiguous loss.
You simply are not. She keeps saying this. This is something that like really pisses me off. She keeps using the term ambiguous loss, and I understand why she's saying it, because like she can't have access to her child, and she keeps tying it back to her child is basically dead to her. That's not, there's no ambiguity here. You did something fucked up over a long period of time. Your child, even if your child never said anything to you about the issues because she didn't feel safe to, she certainly gave you enough of the issues in a letter that you're not going to talk about, which I understand in some ways, but you keep painting her out to be this kind of like vicious, vindictive little spoiled brat, which I don't find acceptable. But she gave you all the answers that you needed. It's not ambiguous. It's not, she's not dead. She's still alive. And if you were willing to do even the smallest amount of self-reflection, you could probably get her back. You could probably have a relationship. Decenter yourself in this issue. You were a parent. You were the adult. You had all of the power in your relationship dynamic. If it's fucked up now, yeah, she is an adult, so a little bit of that's going to be on her, but the majority of it, the vast majority of it, based around when you were raising her, is on you. That's it. That's it. Not ambiguous. You have all the answers.
To look more into ambiguous loss, because it is a special kind of grieving that a lot of people
and maybe that's like a therapeutic term that I'm not understanding, but
they start looking into
like right off the bat, it kind of like irritates me when she's using it.
Going through. When you're grieving ambiguous loss, you really do want to acknowledge and validate your emotions. So you want to let yourself feel the feelings without judgment. They're chemical reactions to our environment. They come and go. They are temporary. They're not forever. However, you don't want to tamp them down and hide from them. You really do need to make space to sit with them and process. I highly recommend you
process being the operative word.
The grieving process. Coping with estrangement is a grieving process, and it's similar to mourning and death.
No.
And it includes all the emotions, the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But this is non-linear. It's not that neat line, the Kubler, I think it's called the Kubler-Ross. It is much more like a roller coaster that goes like this, and you will bounce around like a pinball between all the different emotions for some period of time. So just expect that. So ambiguous loss,
your first curiosity should be about yourself,
because there's
to be curious about why you approach things the way that you do, and to reflect.
Other people don't necessarily know how to respond to it. So that's
I'm sorry, Akira.
More about in future videos. You definitely
my internet
to
is not
make
the
space
best.
for
I need to get something done about it.
Strategies. This is a tumultuous journey dealing with estrangement, and you need to prioritize taking care of yourself first. You need to prioritize your health through proper nutrition and exercise, sleep, and relaxation techniques.
Sure.
If you're a person of faith, then You may already pray regularly, but I also encourage you to try mindfulness or meditation practices to help you manage some of the more intense emotions that you will experience. Seeking support. It's extremely important to seek support when you're ready for it from friends, family, or mental
Ooh, yeah,
health
it is getting choppy,
professionals
huh?
that you trust.
Sorry, guys.
Isolation can intensify feelings of pain and disconnection, so reaching out is crucial. There will be a time where you do need to withdraw into yourself and kind of process the situation, but you also need to be aware that you can go too far with this, and at some point you are going to need to reach out to others and try to get some measure of help, support, validation, connection. It's all about balance. Journaling and recording is a very useful technique for processing estrangement.
Absolutely, Kizzy.
Healing for them. It's a therapeutic tool for kind of processing those emotions. So you can have like an angry journal, a junk journal is what my friend calls it, where you just bang out all the junky things you feel, and once they're out, and that is a way to help process. Don't hold anything back when you are journaling. It's better to...
I think at the end of the day, like, all of these things that she's saying, in a way, are helpful to people going through this kind of estrangement. So I don't think like anything's necessarily wrong. It's just like the way that she's framing it, right? And I'm sorry that like the stream is a little laggy right now. My internet is junk. I'm so sorry, you guys. Well, this is actually, I think I'm gonna save the other two for another stream. So we'll finish this one out, and then we'll say goodnight. And hopefully at some point, this lagginess will go away. But yeah, I don't think any of what she's saying necessarily is like busy. Yeah, my computer's like, no more, no thank you, no thanks. I don't think anything that she's saying is necessarily wrong. It's just like the way that she's framing it is really self-absorbed, and that is upsetting, right? So my hope is that the next two are not going to be awful to listen to, but it sounds like she is doing the same thing where she's just reframing everything to be about selling about her ideas of what this estrangement epidemic is about. Oh no, the audio's going out too. Let me see if we can fix something real quick. Hold on, you guys. Let me see if I can get this fixed. Even my mouse is like, I don't want to do this anymore.